Welcome to the Big Time Strength Podcast, featuring small school strength coaches producing big time results. On behalf of myself, Coach Gage Rozier, and co-host Coach Preston Peterson, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to today's show. Before we get to today's episode, I'd like to recognize our amazing sponsors who allow us to bring this podcast to you for free. Our first sponsor is TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr is the leading software for high schools and colleges by providing coaches the ability to write programs online, generate over 13 reports, and even train athletes remotely for side income. Right now, if you sign up with code BigTime, you will receive a free APRE programming template, which works automatically within TeamBuildr. No more spreadsheets and workout cards to track training maxes that change day by day. Automate your programming without outsourcing your programming with TeamBuildr. Thank you to Hewitt and staff at TeamBuildr for their continued support. They do an amazing job. Our second sponsor is Optimum Nutrition Athletics. Athletes train hard to play at the highest level, and all that hard work raises the bar on muscle recovery. Optimum Nutrition's athletics program has industry-leading products that can help. Protein is key to muscle recovery, and Gold Standard 100% Whey, the world's best-selling whey protein powder, provides 24 grams of protein that mixes easily just using a spoon and a glass. Gold Standard 100% Whey is made in Optimum Nutrition's state-of-the-art facilities in Aurora, Illinois, and is banned substance tested by Informed Choice. Through Optimum Nutrition's athletic program, you can also get Pro Gainer for big athletes looking to become even bigger, and ready-to-eat protein snacks including Protein Crisp bars, cake bites, wafers, and almonds. After dominating the sports nutrition industry for over 30 years, newly created Optimum Nutrition Athletics brings that same trust and quality that knows how to put convenient options for protein in the hands of athletes who desire to become bigger, stronger, and better at their sport. If you'd like more information and free samples, email Derek Walters, Director of Optimum Nutrition Athletics, whose email and contact information you can find in the show notes. Once again, thank you so much to our amazing sponsors for their continued support. Now, let's get to today's episode. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to episode number 62 of the Big Time Strength Podcast. Really excited today to bring to you Coach Tyler Davis. He is the head strength conditioning coach at the University of Central Missouri. Coach Davis and I, we have quite a bit in common. We're both from kind of rural Northwest Missouri, kind of same age, so have similar story and similar past. He started at UCM as an undergrad is where he started getting into it. Went on to Pitt State where he's a GA there, then came back to UCM as an assistant and then promoted to the head spot. So he has a lot of really good stuff for us today. I really like Coach's mindset on a lot of things. So before we get to that, guys, just a quick reminder, Crush Cancer ebook is ready to roll and it's on sale. If you do not know what I'm talking about, go to episode number 60 of the Big Time Strength Podcast, and you can get the background of Crush Cancer. It is supporting my cousin, Riley Holstein, a young aspiring strength coach, just like every single one of us on here, who had his first internship cut short because he's been diagnosed with leukemia. And if you buy this book, you will get an awesome resource back. Just really cool, inspiring, heartwarming stories from 63 coaches. And some really, really creative, fun, hard workouts from those coaches as well. CrushCancerBook.com. If you like this show, please buy that book. You're supporting me. You're supporting this podcast. You're not really supporting me. You're supporting me by supporting my cousin. So go buy the book. All right, guys. Thank you. Let's get to today's episode. Coach Tyler Davis. Enjoy. Hey, Coach Davis, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule and fall sports getting rolling here to be on the Big Time Strength Podcast. And why don't you get us going by just explaining a little bit about where you've been in strength conditioning so far and where you're at right now?
Yeah, well, first off, I'd like to say thanks for having me on. Big fan, love what you do there at Jewel. Big fan of yours, and really appreciate everything you kind of do, putting stuff out there in the strength community and kind of bolstering up some of these small school strength coaches. So thanks for having me on. It's a big honor to be on here. But right now I'm at the University of Central Missouri. I was promoted to the head strength and conditioning coach here in January of 2018. I'm actually an alum from Central Missouri, so I've been a mule for a long, long time now. I started working for the department back in August of 2012 in my undergrad. Just a junior in college, was interested in strength and conditioning, reached out to the head strength coach there at the time, Sean Teeter, and wanted to know if I could come by and just kind of see what was going on, maybe watch a couple workouts, talk to him, bounce some ideas off of him, and got really lucky, and he didn't have anybody else working for him, didn't have any help, and so he offered me a job on the spot, like, do you want to come in and do you want to help with the football team? Do you want to help with strength and conditioning and get guys rolling on everything? And, of course, I jumped on it, and lucky enough for me, I did a good enough job that he asked me to keep coming back, and then next thing you know, 2 years down the road, I was programming and writing workouts for teams on my own here. The first team I got was women's basketball, and really, really, really enjoyed that. Basketball player myself in high school, so big fan of basketball. So getting to work with the women's basketball team here was awesome, and getting to program myself and have the trust from Coach Teeter to be able to do that and know that he was comfortable me running my own sports just as an undergraduate intern, not even a full-time or even a paid GA position or anything like that. So getting the trust and confidence from him to do that, really kind of, I guess, excelled my career from where a lot of people would be coming out of undergrad. Got with Matt Nelson at Pitt State. He was a first-time strength coach there in 2014, in fall of 2014. Went and did my graduate assistant position there. Like I said, this was his first time, Pitt State's first time ever hiring a strength and conditioning coach. So we kind of went in there together in terms of implementing new ideas, things that we were going to implement into the program, kind of start up the strength and conditioning program there, or I guess more or less rejuvenate and re-energize the strength and conditioning program there. They had just built a brand new 11,000 square foot facility, state of the art, and just they really were looking to take their program to the next level. And so we got to go in there, and that was a lot of fun, and learned a ton of stuff from Coach Nelson, and really consider him a mentor and a good friend in this career. And next thing you know, I got lucky, and like I said, I did a good enough job for Coach Teeter that when he had a job open up there in August of 2016, he reached out to me, said he'd love to have me back, and I came back as an assistant coach working with men's and women's basketball here, helping out with some of the other sports. And then when he got the call to move up to the next level, I just stepped in and just glad to, like I said, kind of stars aligned, ended up in the right spot at the right time. And, I definitely feel like I've worked hard to get to where I am, but at the same time, though, too, I've just had a really good group of people around me who've trusted me to do what I do and teach me a lot, and kind of things fell into place for me.
Well, I love your background and your experience there. We're both, small town Northwest Missouri kids, and I feel the exact same way on kind of how I ended up where I'm at. It's I felt like I was prepared for it, but at the same time, a lot of really good people in our lives have helped us get to where we're at right now. And mine just more for the Bearcats, while yours is for the Mules. So,
Yep.
So let's get into kind of what you're doing there at UCM right now. We talked a little bit before we started recording about your staff. Why don't you let our listeners know just a little bit about what your staff is, what it kind of entails, and then maybe get a little bit into how you manage them, develop them, and evaluate them, if you do.
Yeah, for sure. So UCM, we're a larger Division II university. We have an enrollment of about 14,000 students. So we have quite a few sports. We actually have 17 sports on campus, and all of them come through us with strength and conditioning. On staff, it's me as a full-time coach. Kind of as I mentioned, there used to be 2 full-time coaches here. My boss, Sean Teeter, who I worked for in undergrad and was the head guy here, he's no longer here. He took a job at the University of Syracuse, so it's just me now as a full-time guy. But I also have 2 GAs, but we get quite a bit of help from our exercise science, which the guy up there, his name's Dr. Garver, and he's an awesome job sending kids who are interested in strength and conditioning and who he thinks will do a good job helping us out. So we get lots of help from our our exercise science department in terms of kids in here to help us intern. But yeah, we have 17 sports here. There's myself and 2 GAs, and we just kind of split things up evenly. Right now, I'm working with football, men's and women's basketball, and softball. I have 1 GA that's working with track and field. That takes a huge chunk of teams right there when you get the men's and women's track and field and men's and women's cross country. So he works with all 4 of them, wrestling and baseball. And then I have another female GA who's working with ball soccer, women's golf, and bowling. So we kind of just delegate the duties, split up a little bit, and go from there. What I look for in terms of GAs is, I'm wanting people who I can trust to be assistant coaches. I really don't micromanage them too much. I want them to develop and be themselves as coaches. The worst thing I can do for them is make them pay I do. I the ground rules of terms of expect to get accomplished in here, and mostly what I expect to get accomplished in here is if you clear it with head sports coach, everything will be fine. So I don't micromanage them too much in terms of what they do. I've had GAs come in who've been conjugate style people. I've had GAs come in who are big triphasic, tier system people. I'll take any and every kind of GA because honestly, that just boosts my knowledge and my experience working with those guys. So I just say, hey, we want to make sure that we're putting a focus on developing well-rounded athletes. We're not developing power lifters or weightlifters or bodybuilder. We're developing well-rounded athletes. We want to make sure we're doing that by concentrating on good movement patterns, things like that are going to keep guys from getting hurt. But other than that, how you program, how you go about training your athletes, it's up to you and your sports coaches. And so I pretty much let them kind of be coaches, be assistant coaches, be themselves, and go and let them kind of run their programs. And of course, if they need help, if they want advice from me, I'm more than willing to give it to them. But at the end of the day, I'm looking to make sure that when they leave here, the only thing that they didn't learn was just to do what I do. And so I also, like I said, I try to learn as much from them as hopefully I teach them. With our interns, as they come in, I felt like myself, when I was going through the process, I was very curious. I wanted to learn, and I took a lot of initiative myself to educate myself and really, really try to learn as much as I could and develop in the field. I feel like I get lots of interns who feel the same way, but maybe for one reason or another don't know where to turn or where to look. So I've tried to do a much, much better job in my time as the head strength coach, is making sure that I'm developing our interns to go out and be coaches. I tell them all the time, it's awesome to have Alabama or Clemson or whoever on your resume, but if what you've done in your internship is fold towels, make protein shakes, wipe down racks, then you haven't really done much in terms of being a strength and conditioning coach. So, I want them on the floor coaching, learning how to coach, learning how to communicate with athletes, letting them run drills, run warm-ups so that they can get used to speaking in large groups. At least once, if not twice a week, we'll go into the classroom and we will do coaching school where we'll go over different things all the way from resume building to how to handle your social media to, programming, coaching, different lifts, different exercises, how to do anything and everything, scheduling, writing professional emails, anything that you may think of that could help you as a potential GA, we're trying to do that. So, like I said, I felt like when I was living here, I had a ton of experience hands-on as a coach just because I was forced to.
Right.
It was Coach Teeter and myself working with 17 sports. So if I didn't do it, it wasn't going to get done. The program has grown a lot since then. So maybe they're not as forced as I was at that situation. So I'm trying to at least create an environment where they can kind of have the same things, to where, maybe initially your resume may not say Alabama or Clemson or Mississippi or whoever, but at least like you're going to have some practical experience going into it, so that when you are a GA, you're ready to go, you're ready to coach, you're ready to program, and those coaches that hire you are going to look back and be like, hey, man, like, you get a kid from Central Missouri, he's going to do a heck of a job for you.
Right. I love your approach there, and it just speaks for the department you're running there. That's huge. If you got people are wanting to intern, go to there. He's developed as interns. So that's perfect stuff. Going back to that real quick, handing over programming to your GAs. You kind of talked about how you kind of just give them full reign. Is there anything that you say, absolutely not, you cannot do this, whatever that might be?
I haven't yet.
Okay.
And I guess for me, there's obviously things that I wouldn't want to see in programming. But, when we're going through the interviewing process and the hiring process, I try to get a really good feel of the person I'm going to hire and bring in.
Right.
Part of the interviewing process is kind of like, well, what experience have you had programming? What teams have you worked with? So really, I haven't had a situation where we've had to say like, hey, what you're doing is not going to be beneficial. Like maybe it's going to be detrimental to, like maybe it's going to get someone hurt. Maybe like we don't want that. So, I mean, a little bit of it is the initial screening process, that we want to make sure that we're getting coaches, one, that I feel are knowledgeable, but two, honestly, are going to get along well with our athletes and going to fit in. Like we have a pretty good culture here at UCM in terms of across the board and athlete buy-in. So we want to make sure that we're getting coaches here too that aren't going to kind of disrupt that culture. So we go through a pretty extensive process of just making sure that we're going to get the right people in here. So more than anything, I have confidence before they even get on campus that I can turn that over to them without even seeing them program, or without even seeing them program for one of our teams on the first day. Like before they even step on campus, I have a pretty good feeling and pretty good confidence level that I can trust them and that they're going to do a good job with that program. So I haven't came into that situation where, I'm looking at something and saying, hey, like this isn't going to be good for us or good for your sport you're working with. But yeah, there would be some situations for sure that we would want to avoid it. I'm laughing as I'm kind of saying this because my recent GA I just hired, she is a competitive CrossFit athlete, and she wanted to make sure in her interview that she told me that she does not CrossFit her athletes, but she made me laugh because one of the other guys I hired, he's a competitive powerlifter, and I thought it was like really funny that she felt like she needed to tell me, hey, I don't do CrossFit WODs with my athletes, but yet the guy who's a powerlifter didn't feel like he needed to tell me that,
right.
Hey, we're not just going to focus on 3 lifts and that's it in our programming. So I think that's funny. But yeah.
That's interesting. That's cool. I appreciate you sharing that. That was perfect. So one of the challenges a lot of us face, with being and having a limited staff and a lot of athletes is, we're working with these athletes and there's all kinds of training ages within them, right? So do you have some type of a block or like a level system that you use with your athletes to separate out the training ages within groups?
Yeah, we definitely do. Is like you said, it can be tough when there are fewer coaches than athletes to take the time to put athletes into levels or put athletes into needs analysis programs. But it's definitely 100% worth it. I feel like cookie cutter programs, I don't feel like are terrible by any means in terms of efficiency. If you can use a tier system that says, hey, we're going to plug and play. I want to do this, and this. A lot of people would want to knock you for that, and I'm not that guy. I would not knock anybody for doing that. I get it in terms of efficiency and getting your training done. If you're programming well then there's not an issue with it. But me personally, we do have just a wide range of athlete levels here. You know, you get your 5th-year senior on the football team who's been lifting since he was 12 years old, all the way down to you get a skinny freshman kid that was a really, really good athlete in high school and never had to lift. So his first day in the training in a weight room was his first day of redshirt freshman weight, all the way through. It's even more drastic in other sports. Like when we work with women's golf, I'll have a multi-sport athlete who played soccer and basketball and, you know, has been in the weight room versus a girl who's never even thought you needed to lift weights to play or to do golf. So,
right.
You know, it's definitely worth it from our opinion, from our standpoint that it is time consuming. It is a little bit of a pain in the butt to kind of get a need analysis of each individual athlete. You know, typically we try to group them. We may not say like, hey, this one person needs this. We say, hey, this group of athletes need this, whether it's by class. Typically with our football groups, we will do it by class. We'll say like, hey, our freshman class or our level 2 class is kind of like our intermediate class, which is, you know, been in the program 1 to 2 years versus kind of our level 3 guys who are either 4-year guys or, you know, 5th-year guys, or at least guys who kind of meet our minimum benchmarks that we have. Like, hey, in the weight room, if you're cleaning and squatting this much, you know, you can go ahead and be a level 3 guy, where we put an emphasis a little bit different.
Right.
How we do it for basketball, it is with only 12 guys, it's really easy to do a need analysis. Like, hey, this guy needs to be quicker. This guy needs to be stronger. Hey, this guy's pretty good physically, but he needs more time in the gym. So, like, we're shortening his workouts up so that he can be in the gym. So, smaller groups, it's definitely easier. Larger groups, we got to kind of come up with an efficient way where, yeah, you might have a freshman who maybe has a few different needs than another freshman in his class, but overall we know that as a freshman football player, they do probably need to develop physically. Strength needs to come up quite a bit, so we can kind of group them. But we definitely do a level system, a grouping system. It does vary across the sports a little bit, but for us, it's totally worth it. You know, it's something that is time consuming, but we want to make sure that we're offering the best experience, the best way to make sure our athletes are developing and going to be not just, you know, bigger, stronger, more powerful in the weight room, but making sure that what we're going to do in the weight room is going to translate and help them out on the field. And so it's worth it to us to take the time to actually go through and make sure that we're meeting the individual needs of our athletes in their different levels and where they're at kind of in their training age.
And just curious, so if you have a freshman football player come in and he's a stud, will you keep him with the freshman, or you push him up to level 2 within, you know, like a week or something?
It's so part of this is it's a joint decision. I don't make the decision alone. I rely a lot on the sports coaches.
Yeah.
I will tell anybody and everybody on their recruiting visit that I am not a football coach. I have never played a down of football in my life, so I rely heavily on the sports coaches' thoughts and opinions too. So I never make a decision alone with that. So yeah, if we have a freshman kid that I think, hey, he's more than ready to move up to a level 2 and the coach agrees, then we're moving him up. We're not going to hold anybody back. Gotcha. Just because, hey, you're a freshman. Like I said, in general, we'll kind of group guys up, but I mean, we'll also have cases where we have a freshman kid who's a really bad mover and he's not a level 1. He's a level 0. We're holding him back even more. So yeah, we'll definitely pinpoint out, but yeah, the grouping system is like we can just kind of say, hey, our freshman class is level 1, but when you all of a sudden take 125 kids and you narrow it down to one class of 40 kids, then it becomes even easier to kind of pinpoint your outliers. When you say like, hey, our freshman class is a level 1 class, then you can say, well, these 2 guys, they played as true freshmen. I have a kid who actually is I feel like he's going to be a great strength coach one day. He worked for me this summer. He's still playing football for us, but he played as a true freshman. one of the strongest kids, holds like most of the records in all our strength categories. Honestly holds most of the records in some of the speed and agility categories too. Just a great athlete and has been training for a really long time. And he was a no-doubter when he came in. Like I said, he obviously played as a true freshman too, but when he came in, it was like, this guy does not need to be on a level 1 beginner program. Like
right.
he did that 6 years ago.
Yeah. I think it's always interesting too when you get those freshmen. I was actually just talking to a coach about this yesterday. It's really apparent who's had a strength coach in high school and who hasn't. And
Yep.
I don't know. That was just a random thought I had. Shout out to all the high school coaches out there who are doing a good job with their kids. That's all I can say.
Yeah, 100%. Makes our jobs way easier when you get a kid who can come in here and knows how to move his body, and especially under load, and, is well-rounded and developed. And so, yeah, huge shout out to those guys for sure.
So let's talk a little programming. What are some of the methodologies or just concepts you really like to do with your athletes there?
Well, I honestly like to consider myself a little bit of a Swiss Army knife when it comes to programming and different methodologies. I have a base of training principles that I'm going to stick to no matter what. And, they're very common, basic training principles that I think every strength coach in America would agree with. We want to make sure that we're doing ground-based, multi-joint, functional movements in terms of, we're not using machine leg presses and, Hammersmith bench presses to develop our athletes. So I have like a set form of rules that I'm going to follow. Another huge one for me is making sure the athlete can move properly under load before we continue to increase intensity, which I think is a huge point of emphasis that a lot of people miss a lot of times. Is they want to make sure that they master a movement. So they'll be doing like an air squat or a goblet squat for like a counterbalance. But then all of a sudden, when you load a barbell on them, it's a completely different movement because they don't have the musculature to support load. So I say like being able to move properly under load before we advance them and increase the intensity. So, a very set rule of principles that I follow. But other than that, I want to make sure my programming and my methodology matches what my athletes are going to need. As a college strength coach, every 4 years, there's a completely new group of athletes that I had that were not here the year before. Fortunately, like I've been at Central Missouri now for 4 years to where I've actually got to roll through a full set of brand new athletes, kids who were freshmen my first year here are no longer here. So I have a brand new group of kids that I didn't have my first year that I was here. And every team, even within the same sport, from year to year, and especially each team from different sports. Like I said, I work with football, men's basketball, women's basketball, softball. Obviously, as GAs turn over, I pick up other sports here and there. But each sport has a different set of athletes who I feel like respond and maybe get more out of certain methodologies. And I'm not willing to say, hey, I'm a tier system guy, or hey, I'm a triphasic guy, or hey, I'm a conjugate guy, or hey, I'm a whatever guy. I want to use what programming methodology I feel like is going to get the most out of our athletes. And I'm definitely not afraid to, experiment and try to use new things, whether it's on myself or, I have a pretty good relationship with all my student athletes that understand, like, if I'm going to change something or try something new, it is in their best interest, and it's with the idea that this is going to help them. So we use anything and everything that we think is going to be beneficial. Like I said, for men's basketball, I have been really, really successful using some triphasic training methods. I didn't mention in my bio, but I did spend a very short stint. It was a summer internship at the University of Arkansas, and I worked for a guy named Adam Petway, who is probably one of the smartest strength coaches I've ever been around, ever talked to. And he was really, really big into the triphasic method, and he taught me a ton of stuff. And like I said, we did that with our basketball team there, and I implemented it here. And we've had a ton of success, and those guys really, really like it, and they really, really benefit from it. However, my softball team, they didn't care for it as much. It wasn't something that worked well for them. It didn't fit with their scheduling. So for them, I've kind of gone to a what I call a more traditional, but what it would really be is kind of like a modified version of like a West Side for Skinny Bastards. And they love that because for them, we're lifting Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, so we can have an upper, lower early in the week, and then our later in the week, it's more of a total emphasis rather than a extra upper day, but kind of hitting a modified West Side for Skinny Bastards where they can do that. In season, I'm a huge fan of kind of running a cube where my guys and girls all know that like we are going to have at least one heavy lift per week. Now that heavy lift is going to rotate, whether it's a squat or a clean or a deadlift or a bench or whatever it is. It's the lift will rotate, but they know that we're going to have at least one heavy lift per week. So we're able to stay strong. We're still able to lift heavy. We know we're going to have at least one speed day, and then we're going to have one what I would call a light day. In the cube, it's a rep day, but we're not really hitting reps in season but it's more of a light day. So they know each week they're going to squat, they're going to deadlift, they're going to bench. They know they're hitting those three movements. They also know one of them is going to be heavy, one of them is going to be for speed, and one of them is going to be light for reps. But because it's always rotating, we never have the holy crap, like it's the third week of the year and he's still expecting us to hit heavy squats. We're just able to rotate through and make sure that we're able to still train heavy, but we're also still kind of hitting everything we need to hit. And so I just try to match my programming to what I think is going to work best for each individual team.
I think that's a beautiful methods you got there. And just from hearing you talk, you're obviously a big-time student of the profession and trying to get better. So it kind of leads me into my next topic I have for you is what is next for you as far as education? I mean, what are you focusing on getting better at here the next year or so?
Well, kind of like you said, I don't think you can never be too smart. You can never stop learning, and you can definitely. I feel like a lot of young coaches can be intimidated by knowledge, and like what I mean by that is there's some really, really smart coaches in strength and conditioning. Cal Dietz, Brian Mann. There are some really, really, really smart coaches out there, and you can look at them and kind of be intimidated by them and say, "Holy crap, I'm never going to be that smart." In fact, a perfect example of that is I have one of my GAs who's in charge of baseball. He was on Twitter one day, and he was watching a video of a freshman kid who sent something to Eric Cressy, and Eric Cressy watched him throw a fastball, told him this, that, and the other that he had going on. And he's like, how the heck am I ever going to be able to do that? And I look back when I was an undergrad, and I had a professor, his name was Ken Schuler, and he was kind of pushing me towards a career in physical therapy, which I obviously ended up not doing. But at the time I said, well, I could never be a physical therapist. Like, I'm not smart enough. I don't have the schooling. I couldn't do it. And he's like, well, when you were in elementary school, you probably thought someone in junior high was really smart.
Right.
I was like, yeah. And he goes, when you were in junior high, you probably thought someone in high school was smart. And then so on and so forth. He's like, right now as a freshman in college, you probably think like someone in PT school is really smart. But he's like, how did they get there? They were a freshman in college at one point in time thinking, PT students are really smart. So if you take your time and you study and you learn, you can advance through that. So I always think like as young coaches, you can't think about like, well, I'm not smart or I don't know that and just kind of give up on knowledge because you don't know something. Be proactive, learn something. You don't have to learn everything there is to know in one day, but, read articles, read books, listen to podcasts, try to be a sponge and try to gain as much knowledge as possible. And then one day when you've been a strength coach for 20 years, you're probably going to be impressed with how smart you are. And there's going to be some kid that thinks like, hey, you're pretty smart. You know a ton of stuff. So, but to your question, what's next? Like, what am I excited to learn about or kind of get better at is a couple weekends ago, I attended RPR clinic, Reflexive Performance Reset, and it was honestly one of the best clinics I have ever gone to in terms of strength and conditioning and injury prevention. Out of everything I've ever gone to, I definitely took more away from that 2-day clinic than I've done in any other clinic and program that I had. And one of my biggest things is, I've always felt like I've done a really good job of making bigger, stronger, more powerful athletes. However, one of the more overlooked jobs of a strength and conditioning coach up until it happens is injury prevention.
Right.
You get someone in here and you mark your program as successful because you took a kid who could squat 400 pounds and now he can squat 420 pounds. Your program was successful because you made this kid stronger. But if that kid then goes out and blows his knee the first day of practice, then that doesn't do any good. The 420-pound squat for a kid sitting on the bench in a knee brace doesn't help our team out at all. And it's something that you forget about until injuries pile up and the coach is wondering, hey, like, why are all our guys hurt? Like, what are we doing in the weight room to like prevent these injuries? And so it's something that I've always considered something I'm not very good at and something I wanted to get better at. And I am really, really excited to implement a lot of the ideas that we took away from this clinic, even experiment and try to develop on them more, attend more things that are similar so that, not only can we have big, strong, powerful athletes, but we can have healthy athletes because injuries, honestly, not just at UCM, not just in college athletics. I think injuries are just an epidemic in general across all professional sports and even into kind of a growing profession in strength and conditioning is the tactical community. And I think that's why the federal government's pouring lots of money into getting strength and conditioning coaches and athletic trainers into the military and into police departments and into fire departments because, it's something that as we are getting bigger and stronger, more powerful athletes, whether they're sports athletes or tactical athletes, we are getting more injuries because we're producing more force and more power and we're hurt and we're more likely to get hurt because we're not able to sustain the force that we're placing on our body. So the more I can do to help our kids be healthy, the better we're going to be. To steal a quote from Matt Winning, he always talks about the strongest power lifter is the guy who lifts the longest. Well, the same thing for us. Our kids who are fifth-year guys, they're the ones who have the records up there because they've had 5 years of lifting under their belts. We don't have too many freshman kids that have records. Typically you see the teams that do well in football, they're teams that have a lot of juniors and seniors on their team. So the more guys we can have healthy and be on the field, the better we're going to be as a program. So I want to keep our guys healthy, and that's kind of the next thing for us is what's the best way. We're getting big, strong, powerful kids, but how can we keep those kids big, strong, powerful, and healthy on the field?
Yeah, and I 100% agree. And just going back to your first little talk on that, and I can completely relate to being intimidated by knowledge and getting kind of overwhelmed by it because I remember being a GA and looking at my mentor, their head guy at Northwest, Joe, and thinking, man, he's just so much better than I am. How am I ever going to get there? And you just got to pause and think, well, he's been doing this for 15 more years than you have. So just keep keep chipping away at it and keep getting a little better every day is the main thing, I think.
Yeah, it's I could say I'm definitely one too. I'm a very competitive person. So I think that's one thing for me that I don't like having people who I feel like are doing better than me in the profession. I don't like thinking like, hey, that there's someone out there that's doing something that I don't know about. So I try to spend as much time to make myself as knowledgeable or learn as much stuff as possible and really push myself. But yeah, I mean, part of like kind of back to our earlier conversation about me implementing stuff with our internship program is a lot of kids. I had a GA who said her first internship was at Fresno, and she was really disappointed in herself that she didn't get more out of that internship because she felt like the program there was very good. It was very successful. They did a lot of great things, but she didn't take as much away as she thought she could because she just didn't know what to ask. Everything just kind of was over her head and just felt like it was almost missed opportunity for her. And it was the first time the light bulb went off in my head that, like, I probably have kids walking through here every single day that, you know, they see us, even as simple as a warm-up routine. That's just something we do every day. And the only thing they know about it is like, oh, yeah, that's just our warm-up routine. They may not know the how or why or even be able to think of the question to ask how or why. So, you know, I really want to make sure that our interns and our GAs that, you know, they're curious and want to learn and not be intimidated by someone who is really smart or, you know, not just throw their hands up in the air and be like, well, I don't know this. This is over my head. This is too smart for me. But take the time to, you know, yeah, you might not be able to understand this in 1 day or 2 days or even a week. But if you build your knowledge base slowly, that eventually it's going to start to make sense to you. And, you know, we just don't want to just kind of be satisfied with, well, it is what it is. We want to make sure that we're always kind of pushing that, and that just makes everybody better, you know, and share that knowledge with other coaches too. That's huge too, I feel like.
Yeah, no doubt. Sorry to mention kind of RPR and what you're diving into there. How about some of your other, you know, favorite resources in the field that maybe people should figure more about out?
Well, honestly, I think it's just really kind of like we talked about. It's really huge that you don't put yourself in a box. I've been around coaches who, if something doesn't line up with their way of thinking, then they're completely out of it. They don't want to buy into it. Don't want to look at it. It's not for me. I think, you know, I'm going to misquote this. I'm pretty sure the old Bruce Lee quote where, you know, you want to use what's helpful, reject what's not, and then make your own. I think it's very, very important that whatever it is, whether you're reading an article on the NSCA website, whether you're reading just an article on T-Nation, or you're reading a book from Eric Cressy, or you're reading whatever it is, or listening to a podcast, you know, it's very, very important that you don't just shut down an idea because it's not your idea, and try to be sponge up as much knowledge as possible, and don't just disregard it because it's from Elite FTS and some power lifter wrote it. You know, it could have some practical use for something that you're doing with your athletes. I think that's one thing, is a lot of times, you know, across sports, strength and conditioning coaches only look at like what other strength and conditioning coaches are doing. They don't take the time to see, hey, you know, there's a completely different industry out here, whether it's powerlifting or CrossFit, or one that I've spent a lot more time kind of diving into is from the tactical side of things. That, you know, yeah, it's not college athletics, you know, it's not football, it's not basketball, but there's plenty of things that you can take and implement and develop and put into your program but to, I guess, be a little bit more specific with your question, the one area that I feel like I think almost all collegiate strength and conditioning coaches can look at and dive into and kind of take away some resources immediately that's kind of up and coming is the tactical side of stuff, mostly because the federal government's not afraid to run experiments and publish data. So, there's just a lot more out there for them for, hey, we did this and this was the results.
Yeah.
A lot of times in strength and conditioning, Brian Mann mentioned it at the conference this year. Strength coaches are the ones with the athletes, and a lot of times strength coaches are the ones that are too busy to run experiments. Or if they do run experiments, they're just like in-house experiments. The data never gets published. And so the researchers, they go to the strength coaches and say, hey, we want to run this experiment. And the strength coaches says, no, that's not in my program. I don't want to run that. We're not going to do that. So no. And so on the collegiate side, you sometimes get limited on new research, what's out there. Well, that's not an issue from the federal government. If they want to try something, they can issue it and do it and publish a study, and boom, it's there for you. And so there's lots of stuff out there that you can read and implement and get a lot out of right away. So I think as a college strength coach, if you can kind of dive into some of those things, some of the stuff that's getting published, because sometimes it's hard to find out stuff from the collegiate side of, hey, the University of Miami ran this study and it came up with this information. A lot of times the resources that you rely on the collegiate side is more bro science.
Right.
Hey, the strength coach at Alabama, he does this, so we should do this.
Right. Yeah. All right, Coach, I really appreciate your time here. And are you still there? You still with me here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay,
yep.
Sorry. I thought I dropped you there for a second. Really appreciate your time because, everybody's getting rolling here. It's fall camp and school's getting started. I really appreciate you taking time to join us. So let's wrap this thing up. Just 4 quick questions here. Answer them however you want to. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. What's your favorite office snack? I know you're in the office a lot, so what are you eating in there?
For me, it's whatever last night's leftovers were.
There you go. I'm with you. You got 15 minutes to work out for yourself. What are you doing?
I'm a deadlift guy. I'm gonna put the bar on the ground. I'm gonna see how much I can pick up.
Nice. Awesome. What's the best piece of coaching advice you've ever received?
Be flexible. In collegiate strength and conditioning, stuff can change in a hurry. We move practice up 10 minutes. Hey, the guys are going to just come in today, and we want to make sure we have an easy workout because we're going to go run them at practice day. It's important to plan and have a plan, but it's important to have a backup plan and be flexible.
Love it. All right, last one for you, Coach. Give me a couple small school strength coaches or one that you think does a great job and deserves a shout out.
Well, that's a really tough question for me because, as I kind of said at the beginning, I kind of grew up in small strength and conditioning coaches. So there's a ton that come to my mind. The first one I have to shout out, and I know you've had him on the show already, is John Hammersmith at Ferris State. They have a really good program up there, and all their sports are very successful. I know they experienced success kind of before he got there, but when he got there, stepping in, taking over 15 of their 17 sports, he works his butt off. He'll be the first guy to tell you he's maybe not the smartest coach. I'll tell you, no one's going to outwork him in terms of being a coach. And, since he's been there, they won a national championship in basketball, runners-up in football, and he's definitely – they had success before he got there, but he's taken them to the next level. He's a great coach. A mentor of mine, and I know a mentor of yours, you mentioned him earlier, Joe Quinlan. He's awesome. He's a great source of information, a great strength coach, and just honestly a great person. But honestly, anybody who's a small strength coach, a small school strength coach, whether it's NAIA, Division III, most Division II schools, like all those guys deserve a shout out. One thing I feel like a huge issue in strength and conditioning is specialization. You hear, I'm the basketball strength coach, I'm the football strength coach, I'm the baseball strength coach. If you're a multi-sport strength coach, hats off to you. You're the man, in my opinion. If you can work with softball in the morning, you have at 6:00 the ball's rolling through, and at 6:30 you got the first group of football, and then at 7 you have track. And you're working with sports throughout the day, and you're able to train multiple athletes, male, female, from everywhere. You're the backbone of strength conditioning, and I think that's kind of a dying art, and a lot of people don't want to do that. And so if you're that guy, then hats off to you, and you deserve a shout out.
100%, man. I echo that myself. That's great words there. All right, Coach Davis, really appreciate you again coming on. I will put your email in the show notes for any coaches who want to reach out to him and just pick his brain. Give him a call. He's spectacular, and I'm sure he'd be more than willing to spend some time to talk shop with you. So, Coach, good luck this fall. Hope you guys stay healthy and all your teams there, and keep killing it there, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, and thanks again for having me on.